Solon marveled at this, and earnestly requested the priest to inform him exactly and in order about these former citizens. "You are welcome to hear about them, Solon," said the priest, "but for your own sake, and for that of the city, and, above all, for the sake of the goddess who is the common patron and protector and educator of both our cities. She founded your city 1,000 years before ours, receiving from the earth and Hephaestus the seeds of your race, and then she founded ours, the constitution of which is set down in our sacred registers as 8,000 years ago. As touching the citizens of 9,000 years ago, I will briefly inform you of their laws and of the noblest of their actions, and the exact particulars of the whole we will hereafter go through at our leisure in the sacred registers themselves. If you compare these very laws with your own, you will find that many of ours are the counterpart of yours, as they were in the olden time. In the first place, there is the caste of priests, which is separated from all others. Next, there are the artificers, who exercise their several crafts by themselves, and without admixture of any other. And also there is the class of shepherds, and that of hunters, as well as that of husbandmen. And you will observe too that the warriors in Egypt are separated from all the other classes, and are commanded by the law only to engage in war. Moreover, the weapons with which they are equipped are shields and spears, and this the goddess taught first among you, and then in Asiatic countries, and we among the Asiatics first adopted. Then as to wisdom, do you observe what care the law took from the very first, searching out and comprehending the whole order of things, down to prophecy and medicine, the latter with a view to health, and out of these divine elements drawing what was needful for human life, and adding every sort of knowledge which was connected with them. All this order and arrangement the goddess first imparted to you when establishing your city, and she chose the spot of earth in which you were born, because she saw that the happy temperament of the seasons in that land would produce the wisest of men. Wherefore the goddess, who was a lover both of war and of wisdom, selected and first of all settled that spot which was the most likely to produce men like herself. And there you dwelt, having such laws as these, and still better ones, and excelled all mankind in all virtue, as became the children and disciples of the gods. Many great and wonderful deeds are recorded of your state in our histories, but one of them exceeds all the rest in greatness and valor. For these histories tell of a mighty power which was aggressing wantonly against the whole of Europe and Asia, and to which your city put an end. This power came forth out of the Atlantic Ocean, for in those days the Atlantic was navigable, and there was an island situated in front of the straits, which you call the Columns of Heracles. The island was larger than Libya and Asia put together, and was the way to other islands, and from the islands you might pass through the whole of the opposite continent which surrounded the true ocean, for this sea, which is within the Straits of Heracles, is only a harbour having a narrow entrance, but that other is a real sea, and the surrounding land must be truly called a continent. Now, in the island of Atlantis, there was a great and wonderful empire, which had rule over the whole island and several others, as well as over parts of the continent. And besides these, they subjected the parts of Libya within the columns of Heracles, as far as Egypt, and of Europe as far as Tyrrhenia. The vast power thus gathered into one endeavored to subdue at one blow our country and yours, and the whole of the land which was within the straits. And then, Solon, your country shone forth in the excellence of her virtue and strength among all mankind. For she was the first in courage and military skill, and was the leader of the Hellenes. And when the rest fell off from her, being compelled to stand alone, after having undergone the very extremity of danger, she defeated and triumphed over the invaders, and preserved from slavery those who were not yet subjected, and freely liberated all the others who dwelt within the limits of Heracles. But afterward there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of rain all your warlike men in a body sunk into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared, and was sunk beneath the sea. And that is the reason why the sea in those parts is impassable and impenetrable, because there is such a quantity of shallow mud in the way, and this was caused by the subsidence of the island. Plato's Dialogues 2:617 Timaeus. But in addition to the gods whom you have mentioned, I would specially invoke Mnemosyne, for all the important part of what I have to tell is dependent on her favor, and if I can recollect and recite enough of what was said by the priests, and brought hither by Solon, I doubt not that I shall satisfy the requirements of this theatre. To that task, then, I will at once address myself. Let me begin by observing, first of all, that 9,000 was the sum of years which had elapsed since the war which was said to have taken place between all those who dwelt outside the pillars of Heracles and those who dwelt within them. This war I am now to describe. Of the combatants on the one side, the city of Athens was reported to have been the ruler, and to have directed the contest. The combatants on the other side were led by the kings of the islands of Atlantis, which, as I was saying, once had an extent greater than that of Libya and Asia, and, when afterwards sunk by an earthquake, became an impassable barrier of mud to voyagers sailing from hence to the ocean. The progress of the history will unfold the various tribes of barbarians and Hellenes which then existed, as they successively appear on the scene. But I must begin by describing, first of all, the Athenians as they were in that day, and their enemies who fought with them, and I shall have to tell of the power and form of government of both of them. Let us give the precedence to Athens. Many great deluges have taken place during the 9,000 years, for that is the number of years which have elapsed since the time of which I am speaking, and in all the ages and changes of things there has never been any settlement of the earth, flowing down from the mountains as in other places, which is worth speaking of. It has always been carried round in a circle, and disappeared in the depths below. The consequence is that, in comparison of what then was, there are remaining in small islets only the bones of the wasted body, as they may be called. All the richer and softer parts of the soil having fallen away, and the mere skeleton of the country being left. And next, if I have not forgotten what I heard when I was a child, I will impart to you the character and origin of their adversaries, for friends should not keep their stories to themselves, but have them in common. Yet, before proceeding farther in the narrative, I ought to warn you that you must not be surprised if you should hear Hellenic names given to the foreigners. I will tell you the reason of this. Solon, who was intending to use the tale for his poem, made an investigation into the meaning of the names, and found that the early Egyptians, in writing them down, had translated them into their own language, and he recovered the meaning of the several names, and retranslated them, and copied them out again in our language. My great-grandfather, Dropidas, had the original writing, which is still in my possession, and was carefully studied by me when I was a child. Therefore, if you hear names such as are used in this country, you must not be surprised, for I have told you the reason of them.